start talking about formulas and functions. We're all the way down to Module 8 now. This is Section 1. And in this section, I want to give you a quick overview of formulas and basically how they work. A formula is basically a mathematical calculation that tells Excel what to do. You can do simple things like add a column of numbers to really sophisticated things like statistics and things you would never even imagine. Excel is very, very powerful when it comes to formulas. Let's get a quick overview of how formulas work, and then we'll jump right in and start creating some formulas using functions. What you need to remember when you're writing formulas is that wherever you click the mouse, that's where the answer is going to appear. Formulas can be on the same sheet as the data, they can be on a separate sheet as the data, or they can be in a totally different file, and we'll be doing all of this as we go through these videos. But just to give you a quick overview and review, let's say that I wanted to add my numbers for January. I'm going to click in C12 next to total because that's where I want the answer to be, and I'm going to put in the equal sign. Remember that all formulas must start with an equal sign, no exceptions. I'm going to click on C6. I'm going to hit the plus sign, C7 plus, C8 plus, C9 plus, C10. And when you're finished writing your formula, you just hit the enter key and you will have your answer just like that. Now think about this. Even though I was able to click on each cell and tell Excel that I'd like to add another number, if I have 1,000 numbers to add, do you think I want to count all the way to 1,000? That's just going to take me all day long to do that. We're going to have other ways we can write formulas using functions. A function is going to be a word we use in our formula to tell it what to do. Another example of a super basic one where we're adding is, let's say we go over here to column G and I want to add up all of the figures for this line. I'm going to start with equals. I'm going to click on the 110, which is in C6, plus because I have another one. Then I have D6 plus because I have another, E6 plus, and then F6, and I'll enter. And now I've got that one. That's going to give you a quick overview of how basic formulas are written. I really want to take you now over into the second part of this, and let's talk about how to use functions, because that's really going to make your life a lot easier when you have a word that tells it what to do in your formula. Welcome back. We're working in Module 8 and we're talking about formulas and functions in this particular module. We did a real quick overview of formulas in Section 1. Now that we're in Section 2, I want to actually talk to you a little bit about creating formulas using functions. A function is basically a word that tells it what to do in your formula, and I'm going to go through all of these with you and show you how this works. Let's flip over to Excel and we'll write some more formulas. We already added up January. We did this manually by clicking inside of each of the cells we wanted to add, but that was the long way to do it. I'm going to go ahead and hit delete here and talk to you a little bit about using functions in your formulas. A function is a word that you use in your formula to tell it what to do. There are over 200 functions built into Excel. The most common of the 200 is the word sum, S-U-M, which basically means to add. Typically, if I ask students if they've ever written a formula before, they'll say yes, and they'll say someone showed them how to do this. Notice that I'm under the Home tab, and there's this Auto Sum button right here. You're also going to find that same button under the tab that says Formulas. I'd probably use it under the Formulas tab. You'll see it right here, because we'll also be looking at some of these other options that have to do with formulas as well. I'm going to click the Auto Sum button, and notice that it put a formula in for me. And do you notice it didn't put the answer in? It put the formula in and it's just sitting there because it wants to make sure this is exactly what I want. Now notice it's assuming I want to add everything above where I was clicked. Notice it also included row 11, which has nothing in it. That won't affect anything as far as the answer goes in this case, but if I did add a number in C11, it would become part of my answer. If this is what I want, I just hit the enter key. If it's not, let's say I didn't want 11 in there, I would just drag through what I do want, just like this, and then hit the enter key. And now you can see I have the exact same number I had earlier, except I didn't have to manually tell it to add each one of these. So if you notice the way the formula reads now, it says I want to add the range C6 through C10. And that's the easiest way if you want to add a range of numbers that are all together. Now let me show you what happens when you go over to the next one, because I need February as well. If I come up and hit auto sum again, you'll see that again it assumes that I want to add everything above this. I'm going to go ahead and just hit the enter key, and now I've got 965. Now watch what happens when I do the third one here. I'm going to hit auto sum, and notice it assumes I want to add everything to the left of where I'm clicked. I don't. I'm trying to add everything above it. So I'll just click and drag the range I do want to add and then hit the enter key. Now if it were me doing this, I would have done the first one and just used the fill handle and dragged across to copy my formula, but I did want to show you some other ways to write this formula. I also wanted to show you this little green mark that you see right here and what that actually means. If you know how grammar check works in Microsoft Word, it's very similar. It's letting me know that the formula I have here may be wrong, and the reason it says that is because it's looking at the one to the left of it and it knows it's different. When you have an error, if you notice, if you look where this exclamation point is, it tells me the formula in this cell differs from the formulas in this area of the spreadsheet. This one over here was 6 through 10. When I look at this one, it's 6 through 11. It's not hurting a thing, my answer is still correct, but if I wanted to fix it, I could go ahead and pick one of the choices from this drop-down list. The one I'd probably choose is to copy the formula from the left. There you go. The answer is the same, but now it includes 6 through 10. The last way I wanted to show you this is if you, before you ever write your formula, select everything you'd like to add and the blank one for the answer, then you can go up to auto sum and it will just give you the answer because it doesn't have to guess what it is you're trying to add. I could also do the same thing from left to right. If I wanted to go ahead and select all of these as an example, I've got all the cells I'd like to add and the blank ones over here for the answer. I can hit auto sum and there I have the answer as well. Now I've got one more down here. There's several ways I can do this. I can actually copy this formula using my fill handle, or I could have hit auto sum and added everything above. And that's actually a really good way to check and see if this total answer is correct, to do it each way, and if you get the same answer, then you know it's the right answer. Now let's go down and talk about averages. The word that you want to use here is the word average. If I type equals the entire word average and then my open parenthesis, I can drag through my range and then I can hit the enter key, and I've done it the exact same way. The word high means when I'm looking at this range of numbers, what's the highest number? The word I'm going to use for that is the word max. I'm going to type equals the word max, open my parenthesis, and then I can drag through the range and I should get 220. Now let's talk a little bit about these functions and where they come from. Let me go ahead and just select this range again because I wanted to show you that if you have a range selected, you can look down at the bottom here and see the 6 most common functions in the answers. And these aren't going to put the answer anywhere, it's just for you to know. I happen to have the average turned on. There's a count. Count counts the number of cells you have selected. The numerical count will count the ones with numbers in them. Min means what's the lowest number in my range. And if you had max there, it would mean what's the highest number in the range. And of course, sum means add. If I right click on any of these, you'll see right here in this area are the 6 most common. The ones I've checked are the ones that you're seeing down there at the bottom. So if I don't want one of these, I can just uncheck it. And you'll see now I've only got a couple of them down there. But those are the 6 most common functions right here. And you can't change that. Average, you're going to add all the numbers and divide by the number of cells you have selected. And I told you about the rest of these so you know what those mean. Now remember, a range can be 2 cells as long as they're adjacent. If they're not adjacent, you're not going to see anything down here. If I just click randomly somewhere, you'll see there's nothing down here to look at. Now let me go back to C12, and I'm just going to hit delete here. I want to take you through your ribbon to show you where all of these functions happen to live. You can use this little FX here, which is insert function, or you can come up here where it says insert function and use it that way. I did tell you that there are over 200 built-in functions in Excel, and I wanted to show you that they're all right here in this list. Now when you start looking at this list, you'll notice that currently I'm looking at a category called most recently used. These will be the last ones that were used in my computer. This makes it easy if you have several that you use on a regular basis. You can come right back and just click on them from here. But notice if I drop this list down, I can look at all of the functions, and they're in alphabetical order. From there, I can take that list and look at just the ones that have to do with financial, just the ones that have to do with math and trig, statistics. You can kind of see the list here. Let me go ahead and click on all and just show you how you can look through this list to determine what each one of these actually does. When you're clicked on a particular function, it will tell you down here what that function does, or the definition. This one, for example, will return the inverse hyperbolic cosine of a number. And some of these may be way over your head because these can be very, very sophisticated. But looking down this list, let's talk about a few of these that you're going to use. Here's average, for example, and you know what that one means. Some of these that say if at the end, this means do the average if certain criteria is met. You'll see that there's a lot of them that have to do with what we call chi-beta probabilities. You're going to see that there's some that have to do with ceilings, some of these have to do with columns. Here's one that you might use from time to time, concatenate. If you happen to have 2 columns of information that you want to put together in one column, and an example I see all the time is someone will have the last name in a column and the first name in another column, and they want to actually join them all together in their own column. You would use concatenate to do that. Let's go ahead and stop the video right here, and I'm going to have you go over into the second part of this, and we will continue looking at these different functions. Okay, welcome back. We're in Module 8, and we're talking about formulas and functions in this particular module. We've already gone through Section 1 where we got an overview of how formulas work, and we started working on Section 2 where I'm showing you how to create formulas using functions. We were in the middle of looking at those functions, so let's go ahead and continue so we can see some of the other functions that are in Excel. The last one we looked at was concatenate, which allows you to join 2 different columns of information together in one. So let's keep going. When you go down the list, another one that's going to be really popular is the count function. If you have a series of numbers and you know you should have 100 numbers and you select them all and it says you have 99, then you know you're missing someone. Here's one that counts all the blank cells. Here's one that will do a count if it meets certain criteria that you put in. Going down the list, we've got a couple more. Let's say, for example, you want to work with some date and time functions. You've got a couple right there. You've got some other functions going down, and let's keep on going until we see if. An if statement is going to be something you're going to do on a regular basis. We'll be actually running one of these in a later module, but basically you have it checked to see if something you've typed in is true. If it is true, you have it do one thing. If it's false, you have it do something else. Going down the list, there's a few more that are going to be really popular. And let's just kind of get on down here to where we see sum. There was max, I just passed max on the list. That finds the highest number in your range. Remember that min, M-I-N, will find the lowest number in your range. Let's say we've looked down the list and we come across the word sum, S-U-M, and we decide that this is the one we want because it adds all the numbers in a range of cells. I'm just going to hit OK. And now this is the part called function arguments. The arguments portion is basically the range portion, or where the numbers are you want to do something with. Notice it assumed C6 through 11. I can leave it there, or I can change that last one there to a 10 because I do want C6 through 10. Notice it shows me all the values in those cells, and it gives me the result right down here. I'm going to come back in a minute and tell you about number 2, but for now I'm going to click OK, and there's the exact same formula we wrote using the auto sum, or we could have written it by hand. The reason you have that number 2 field was because what if you're going to add two different ranges? Let's say for whatever example over here I'd like to add January and March. What I would do is I would go to Insert Function. I would find Sum from the bottom of the list here. Notice if I click here I can hit S and I'll go to the S's. I'm going to find Sum. When I click OK, it's going to assume the range, and I said I wanted January, so that's my first range. Now I'm going to click where it says number 2, and I'm going to drag through March. And that's why you have multiple fields. I could even add a third range if I wanted, and it would keep on going. But that's what that extra field there is for. Let me go ahead and cancel out of that. I'm going to go ahead and use my fill handle and copy across to get my averages, and my fill handle for the highs to copy across to get those. I wanted to briefly tell you about these buttons right here. They may look familiar. This is your function library. If you remember when I took you into the Insert Function button, there were several different categories I told you that you could pick from. You've got financial, date and time, math and trig, and you'll see a lot of these right here. It's just a quick way if I don't want to come all the way back into this Insert Function window and I'm looking for a particular function that I know happens to be under financial, for example, I can just grab it right